Now Joseph's brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them," he answered. "Here I am." So he said to him, "Go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring word back to me." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron. He came to Shechem, and a man found him wandering in the fields. And the man asked him, "What are you seeking?" "I am seeking my brothers," he said. "Tell me, please, where are they pasturing the flock?" The man said, "They have all gone away. For I heard them say, 'Let's go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. They saw him from a distance, and before he came near to them, they conspired to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we shall say a wild animal has devoured him, and we shall see what has become of his dreams." But when Reuben heard it, he delivered him out of their hands, saying, "Let us not take his life." Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into the pit here in the wilderness, but lay no hand on him. He might rescue him out of their hands and restore him to his father." When Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the long robe with sleeves that he wore, and they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty, and there was no water in it.
Then they sat down to eat, and looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels carrying gum, balm, and raisin on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers agreed. When some Midianite traders passed by, they drew Joseph up, lifting him out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they took Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes. He returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone, and where can I turn?" Then they took Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, and dipped the robe in the blood. They had the long robe with sleeves taken to their father, and they said, "This we have found. See now whether it is your son's robe or not." He recognized it and said, "It is my son's robe. A wild animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt turned to pieces." Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters sought to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "No, I shall go down to Sheol to my son mourning." Then his father bewailed him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard.
Now Joseph was taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man. He was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to prosper in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight, and attended him, and made him overseer of his house, and put him in charge of all that he had. From the time that he made him overseer in his house, and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had, in house and field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and with him there he had no concern for anything but the food that he ate. Now Joseph was handsome and good-looking, And after a time his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Look, with me here my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he has put everything that he has in my hand. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except yourself, because you are his wife. How then could I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" And although she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not consent to lie beside her or to be with her. One day, however, when he went into the house to do his work, and while no one else was in the house, she caught hold of his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand, and fled, and ran outside.
When she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled outside, she called out to the members of her household, and said to them, "See, my husband has brought among us a Hebrew to insult us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And when he heard me raise my voice and cry out, he left his garment beside me and fled outside." Then she kept his garment by her until his master came home, and she told him the same story, saying, "The Hebrew servant, whom you have brought among us, came in to me to insult me. But as soon as I raised my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled outside." When his master heard the words that his wife spoke to him, saying, "This is the way your servant treated me," he became enraged. And Joseph's master took him and put him into prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. He remained there in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love. He gave him favor in the sight of the chief jailer.
Good morning, everyone. First, let me just say that it is such an honor to be a part of your 2020 GraceWorks at Home event. And now first I wish to share my Joseph story with an introduction to the biblical text. And I must say that next to Jesus' story, the Joseph story is my most favorite biblical story of all. It begins in Genesis chapter 37, skips chapter 38, convenes in chapter 39, and continues through to chapter 50. In our first passage of Scripture, here in the 37th chapter, is a depiction of Joseph having been sent by his father to check on his brothers who had gone out to pasture. And here we learn that Joseph was so despised by his brothers that they wanted to kill him. Instead, they put him in a pit, which led to Joseph being carried away to Egypt and sold into slavery. We must ask ourselves, what could Joseph have possibly done so badly that would cause his brothers to hate him enough to kill him? And then lead him into a life of captivity as a slave. Joseph had done nothing wrong to his brothers, except for the fact that he was born when he was and as he was. Joseph was an innocent victim of a severe case of sibling rivalry. And this is all revealed in the first 11 verses of this 37th chapter. Next in our passage of the 39th chapter is a depiction of Joseph's enslavement, but taking a turn for the better, as revealed in verse 2, and it reads, "The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man." As Joseph had the favor of God and of his Egyptian master, his life was changing progressively. That is, until his master's wife was enticed by Joseph's good looks. He was a handsome man. And then being falsely accused by her of sexual assault, he ends up imprisoned. Here we clearly see that once again Joseph had done nothing wrong. Once more, he was an innocent victim who, being mistreated, and ended up in double bondage, mind you. an enslaved prisoner, double bondage, all because he was born as he was, gifted and all. And now, in spite of these negative aspects of Joseph's livelihood, overall his story ends victoriously in the remaining chapters, as it is a fascinating one about God's favor on his life. And so I liken my life story to Joseph's story, in the sense that having been born as I was, a poor black female during segregation and Jim Crow laws, throughout my lifetime, I have faced being hated and mistreated as an innocent victim of racism, sexism, and classism, simply because, like Joseph, I was born when I was and as I was, in this dark skin. Yet with gifts, thanks be to God. So like Joseph's successful outcome in the end of his story, as a poor black female, I climbed the ladder of success, accomplishing various achievements in spite of societal obstacles. For instance, as the youngest of 7 siblings, I have 4 brothers and 2 sisters. I am the only one to attend college and earn a degree. It is not my intention to sound boastful, but while certain ones of my siblings have desired to pastor a congregation, instead God calls me to be a pastor, when it was the farthest thing from my mind. And now serving as a pastor is of no regret to me, for it is the will of God. And then finally, in addition, I must add that my historical ordination in 2013 as the first African American to be ordained in the South Carolina Senate, and the first African American and first female to pastor this church, the Ascension Lutheran Church, is all attributed to the favor of God, and of God giving me favor in the sight of humankind. So, living in this world of racial inequality as I have, I attribute all of my achievements to God's favor, God's love, and God's grace. For I know that just as the Lord was with Joseph, the Lord has been and is also with me. Thanks be to God. And this is my Joseph story.